Hey folks, I am Kevin Iole. UFC 267 was last week, was sensational. UFC 268 is on Saturday night at Madison Square Garden. Here to talk to me about all of it is the president of the UFC, Dana White. Dana, unbelievable show on Saturday.
I had a blast, man. I had a really good time out there, and yeah, the fights were awesome.
You know, I mean, there were so many good fights on the card, but of course, you know who I'm going to talk about first is my man, Khamzat Chimaev. Just an unbelievable performance against Li Jingliang, submitted him in the first round. You know I was texting back and forth with you, and you told me what Chimaev was saying during the fight. When you look back on that, isn't it amazing that you're talking about a ranked fighter here, that Chimaev is able to not only fight, but then communicate with you as he's doing it?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. He is incredibly talented. I mean, I saw it, on Fight Island last year. And then after he fought twice, I think everybody got to see who he really was. How about this? He's got more UFC wins than he's been hit in the UFC. That's insane. Yep. And he's got 4 fights.
I think
all against real guys.
Yeah, 1 significant strike against him. I think 2 total strikes. So pretty remarkable. First of all, I think
Kevin, this too. That night, our social team filmed his walkout. It broke the record for the highest Instagram live ever in UFC history.
Do you know how much it was by chance?
Massive. Okay. It's the biggest ever. It broke the record.
So bigger than Conor, bigger than Khabib. So
bigger than anything we've ever done.
That is amazing. Yeah, people were just into this guy. My take on it after watching the fight was that, hey, he's ready to fight for the championship right now. You've been doing fights a long time. When you look at him, I mean, do you think he's ready for an Usman or a Covington or somebody of that ilk?
Well, I think you take him up and get him somebody in the top 5, or and there's a lot of Nate Diaz was looking for a fight. Khamzat wants to turn around, so we're talking to Nate Diaz about it. Gilbert Burns wouldn't be a bad fight. He's ready for that top 5.
And it seems like he's as good at middleweight as hey, Gerald Meerschaert is no joke, and Gerald Meerschaert is a talented guy, a lot of submissions in the UFC, and he puts Meerschaert out in 17 seconds. It was like with
1 punch.
Yeah. I mean, and there's the stories about his strength in the gym, how physically strong he is, are just off the charts. You hear this stuff. It's just amazing with him.
There's a badass picture on the internet right now of him standing on the cage with his arms up. And at the same time, all the people in Abu Dhabi are on their feet with their hands up. You look at Khamzat's back. Look at his back in this friggin' picture. It's insane. The guy's a freak of nature.
Yeah, no.
I don't know if you can see this.
Yes, there it is. Yeah.
Look at that picture. When you go online, look at his back.
Yeah, just the guy is amazing. I mean, just a physical freak. And, I look at a Covington or an Usman who were fighting at UFC 268 on Saturday that we were here to talk about. And I go, hey, they're experienced and they have wrestling and stuff that, some of these other fighters he fought don't have to that degree. But I'll tell you what, I mean, it's not going to be an easy fight for them against him either.
100%. And listen, I mean, Khamzat burst onto the scene. If he can rip through, a Nate Diaz, a Gilbert Burns, one of these kind of guys, and get to a title shot. I mean, when you think about, there is no doubt whatsoever, Kamaru Usman is the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, right? The guy wins the Ultimate Fighter. He's gone 14-0 in the UFC, and he's fought everybody. Not only has he fought everybody, he's starting to lap people now. He's starting to fight them twice, right? Has the record for longest win streak, has the record for least time on the bottom, has the record for highest takedown defense. So when you look at all the tools that a guy like Kamaru Usman has, and you think about a guy like him and Khamzat, that's a real fight.
Yeah, I know. I don't disagree with you. And we'll get to that Usman-Covington rematch in a couple seconds. Second thing, to a lesser degree, the guy that, kind of blew me away was Peter Yan. Peter Yan, very dominant against a tremendous fighter. I mean, Corey Sandhagen, I thought fought really good against TJ Dillashaw, raises his level against Peter Yan, and Yan still wins the fight in fairly convincing fashion. Were you as blown away with Peter Yan's overall?
Blown away.
Yeah.
That fight was so badass. And when you look at Sandhagen, right? Sandhagen wants to go back, to the drawing board and look at the mistakes he made and the things that he did wrong. He didn't make too many mistakes and didn't do many things wrong. I mean, the guy did exactly what you do when you're the size that he is. He's huge and lanky. He stayed on the outside, tried to pick him apart, landed great shots, but the counter punching by Peter Yan, the pressure by Peter Yan, and Sandhagen had unbelievable counter punching too. The tough part about it is if you're Corey Sandhagen and you want to go back and say, why did we lose this fight? What did I do wrong? Corey, you didn't do much wrong. You fought a perfect fight. You did everything that you were supposed to do. It's just Peter Yan is a savage. I mean, the guy is an absolute stud.
I thought, Dana, that the difference in the fight from the second round on was that Yan got to that distance where he was able, and the first round, he was kind of at the end of Sandhagen's kicks and punches. And then he just kind of, he closed the distance just that little bit. And now his strikes were becoming a lot more effective, and that's something that a lot of people don't, take as a skill, but I mean, that's a really good skill where he got into a position where, he's the shorter fighter and yet he's still able to land consistently.
I felt exactly. I felt like Sandhagen had the distance and the range the whole night, and he was running around the octagon and trying to pick him apart. And every time Peter Yan would throw, no matter what the distance was, he would land punches, which is so hard to do against the guy with the reach and height and movement of Corey Sandhagen. It was unbelievable.
Footwork. You think of Dominic Cruz, and that footwork was incredible. And he got in there, got that distance, and did what he needed to do. It's amazing. It
really was.
So,
and it was an exciting fight. It was a great fight. You were like on the edge of your seat the entire time, and 5 rounds went by like this.
Yeah, no, that was really phenomenal. Do we assume that the champ versus champ is the next fight? I mean, the fight I want to see would be him and TJ Dillashaw, because I think that's the next logical fight. I know, but Aljamain has the belt. Is that what you look at and say would be next?
You do the Sterling fight, you get that over with, and then whoever wins would fight Dillashaw.
Okay. All right, sounds fair enough. And then finally, a lot of other storylines we can talk about on UFC 267, but we don't have a lot of time, so let's just get into Glover Teixeira. I mean, now I wrote before the fight, and I talked to Duncan French at the PI about kind of Glover embracing the technology and all the teaching that they did and how it had gotten to the title shot. But I'll tell you what, even though I picked him to win the fight, I don't know that I picked him to win in that dominant one-sided fashion. That was just an amazing performance by Glover Teixeira, was it not?
I agree with you. Yeah. Incredible story that guy has and what he's been able to do in the last couple of years. And it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But the problem with that fight was they're both really nice guys. You know what I mean? Blachowicz is a great guy.
Yeah, he is.
He's a great guy. It's one of those fights you don't want to see a loser, But unfortunately, in sports, there's got to be a winner and a loser. And he came out and dominated and looked incredible.
I don't know if you happened to see my interview with Blachowicz before the fight. I guess you didn't see it, but because we didn't run the whole interview because he had some audio problems. But one of the things he said to me was, I said, hey, this is like the 2 old guys in the division going at it. And he said, yeah, we want to have the winner fight you, meaning me. And I'm like, okay, now I'm glad that Glover won because Glover doesn't want to fight me. So that's crazy. So, at 42 years old, obviously Glover's not going to have a long title reign, but I mean, you're going to put him in against a young stud, a guy coming up, Yuri Prochazka. Just give me a quick thought on Prochazka as, a guy coming into the UFC, and he reminds me to a certain degree of Giga Chikadze, right? Of how quickly Giga Chikadze has kind of exploded here recently. And Prochazka is similar in that, even quicker, but what he's doing. What are your thoughts on a potential title fight between Prochazka and Teixeira?
Yeah, it's interesting. He's the number 2 ranked guy in the world. He's next in line, and we'll see. Can Glover hold on to that belt and maybe get a couple defenses under, while he's here, or is the younger guy going to come in and take it, and maybe go on a run himself?
Yeah. How good do you see Prochazka being? I mean, obviously, time will tell, but I mean, do you look at him as one of those guys that, can be an Adesanya, a transformational type fighter, given what he does?
Yeah. Any of these guys that break into the top 5 are dangerous. And then, you break into the top 3, it's a whole nother level. Very, very, very few people actually do it. The question is, can he get in there against a vet who has heavy hands, can knock you out, or his takedowns are awesome. He did say before that fight, trust me, I will take Blachowicz down. And he did immediately. And when he gets to the ground, can he stay out of his submissions? Because Glover has a very well-rounded game. He might be older, but he's got a lot of experience and he's very well-rounded.
I talked to Chuck Liddell after the fight, and he was really excited. They were obviously teammates at the pit for a long time, and Chuck was really blown away by Glover's performance.
Chuck's been talking about Glover to me for, almost 20 years.
Incredible. Let's move on, Dana. I'm talking to UFC President Dana White. UFC 268 at Madison Square Garden. A stacked card on Saturday. Really an incredible show. Looking forward to this. The main event, Usman versus Colby Covington. I want to start with this. I looked up, I wrote my story on Colby Covington last night. That's on Yahoo Sports right now. And what kind of blew me away is the odds. After the great fight they had at UFC 245 at BetMGM, Usman is minus 300 right now, plus 240 the other way. I am surprised by that. I like Usman to win the fight, but boy, that number seems big to me.
I didn't know that either. And yeah, that is pretty shocking. It means to me that the odds makers think Colby hasn't fought in a while, and Usman has gotten much better since their first fight. But Colby Covington's a dangerous dude, man, and he is highly motivated to win this. Just the hatred between these two alone is enough motivation, let alone becoming a world champion and, life-changing money and all that type of stuff.
In my story about Covington, I pulled an old quote from you. You said this a million times, but I think this was either 2020 or 2019, where you had said, talking about training camps and how, boxing has a right in that regard, where they build a training camp around the fighter and not these team things and everything else. And Colby Covington, when I talked to him, he called it Colby Covington Inc. He has his coaches and his team, and that's it. It's all centered around him. Do you think that that's a smart move? And do you see that making a difference for him going into this fight?
Yeah, it's absolutely the move. When especially if you're a world champion or if you're fighting for a title. I used to see these teams where, a guy would come in and train. He's a world champion or top 5 guy in the world. And he's training with the entire team and he's teaching classes, doing all these weird things. When you get to that level and you're making that kind of money and getting that kind of notoriety, that camp has to be all about you.
Yeah. And Colby's doing that. So that, now I watched the fight 2 times yesterday before I wrote my story, and, you could go 2-2 or 3-1 Usman after 4 rounds going into that 5th round. But Covington was giving him, Covington, not known as a striker, was giving Usman all he can handle with the striking in that fight. That was amazing.
Colby does that to everybody. Everybody's so worried about his wrestling that he starts lighting people up with his striking. It's fascinating. the crazy thing about a fight with these two is they're very similar style fighters. And it usually, when you have these guys who are such good wrestlers and their striking is so good, it usually turns out to be a stand-up fight.
Do you think that, Covington said, I think after the third round, he thought he broke his jaw. It turns out now he says later he did not break his jaw, but obviously he had injured, he was injured there and his eye was swollen up. Do you think that Usman punching power was the difference in the fight, essentially because he was able to inflict damage on Covington that then concerned referee Mark Goddard?
100%. And I would imagine that Usman's power and hands have only gotten better since the last time they fought. But if you look at the card, Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang, Chandler versus Gaethje is a ridiculous fight. But I'm so excited for Usman versus Covington. I love everything about this fight. I can't wait to see it.
A couple times I've heard you say, Dana, that this was the best fight you had seen. Now, I know
it was one of them. One of the best fights I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean that's big. That's saying a lot, especially because you've seen a lot of Justin Gaethje fights.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So I want to get to Rose and Weili in a second, but let's talk about Gaethje versus Chandler. Gaethje.
Hey, real quick, when you were just asking me that, where would you put Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk? And a list of fights that you've ever seen?
I think that's got to be in the top 3 fights all time. I honestly,
right?
The thing, I think that when you think of the great fights that I think of, Dan Henderson and Shogun, who Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald, they had a few more momentum shifts, than that fight had, but that fight had them, right? I mean, and it was a crazy, I also think of what was that Trigg fight with Matt Hughes that was so good back in the day.
Yep.
But Weili and were definitely up there.
So true. Yeah. It's one of the greatest fights I've ever seen.
Let's get to Gaethje because he seems he has a chip on his shoulder. He felt he should have been fighting for the title coming off the loss to Khabib, didn't get that opportunity, and then he and Chandler just have had some back and forth going on. It seems to me like a pissed off. He even got on DC. I don't know if you saw on social media, but he was getting on DC for his comments about Makhachev after the fight. So they had their little back and forth on social media. So it seems like Justin's in an ornery mood, which is probably, from your standpoint as a guy who wants to see good fights, a good thing.
Yeah, listen. Tell me the worst Gaethje fight you ever saw. I mean, you can't even pick one to even remotely be called the worst.
Right.
The kid's always exciting when he comes out and fights. To be screaming for that you should have got a title shot after the Khabib fight. I mean, the Khabib fight was incredibly one-sided and over quickly. But, I mean, Gaethje's still the number 2 guy in the world. Poirier is going to fight Oliveira, and he's going to fight Chandler. And, he couldn't be in a better position. He's in a great spot.
And you also, and Gaethje got mad at DC because he thought he was talking about Makhachev too much. And now you have Makhachev, who is talking about fighting for the title, who had a good performance over Dan Hooker the other day. Is Dariush his future, by the way?
Possibly. I don't know. We'll see how this all works out this week. We got tomorrow we have matchmaking meeting, and the rankings will come out, and we'll start putting all this fun together. It's what's so awesome about this sport. Like, we have a weekend like last weekend, and now everybody's dying to know what fights are going to be made after, last Saturday. And then this Saturday will happen, and then we'll all be pumped up about what's next after Saturday. So, and
then you got Max Holloway coming the following week.
It's true. It's exactly right.
Max Holloway is going to be something. How do you see Chandler? You saw Chandler against Oliveira, and he fought a brilliant fight, almost won the title. So Chandler's a guy that loves putting pressure on, but now you're going to have that pressure back at you, right? You know, with Gaethje coming, how do you see Chandler dealing with that? Do you think Chandler fights the same way and says screw it, and you know they just meet in the center and whoever falls first wins, or do you think you know Chandler might all of a sudden now come up with the wrestling and say, all right, I need to.
This is like that old saying, two unmovable or two unstoppable forces coming together. I mean, you couldn't have a better scenario for a fight. Both have great wrestling. Both are not afraid to stand and bang. It is impossible, absolutely impossible for that fight to suck. I mean, that fight has, if you think about it too, you got Rose and Whaley, you got Kamaru and Covington, plus a ton of other great fights on this card, right? Vera and Frankie Edgar, Ally Quinta and Bobby Green. I mean, just there's so many fun fights. How do you not look and go, yeah, Gaethje Chandler's a fight of the night?
It's when Gaethje fights, I think what you ought to do is just rename the award, give Gaethje 50,000 every time, and rename it the Justin Gaethje
I should just send him
Award.
a check for 50 right now.
Write him the check now, and then just call it the Justin Gaethje Award, and then give somebody else gets fight of the night because Gaethje, you know, we know he's going to win it. So that's just the way it goes.
So I send Gaethje a check for 50 grand, and then the night of the fighter meeting, I go, yeah, there's only one fight. There's only one bonus left and the fight of the night. So good luck, everybody else.
There you go. Rose and Wiley. Rose, big upset of Wiley. You know, maybe, you know. Let me ask you: did you think that was an upset when Rose defeated Wiley? I kind of looked at it as an upset, but did you think it was an upset?
Listen, in my opinion, right now and before that fight, the four baddest women on earth are Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, Rose Namajunas, and Weili Zhang. So anything can happen on Saturday night. You know, never did I not think that Rose was, I mean, the interesting thing about Rose is she's so unassuming. She's so quiet and so sweet. And a tiny little thing, she will knock you dead with her hands, with her feet. She has that female knockout power. And so does Weili.
We're gonna have to get Kayla Harrison in there, but I mean, I'll tell you what, those are four great fighters that you mentioned.
Kayla Harrison hasn't fought anybody yet.
Have you ever seen her fight though?
She hasn't fought anybody.
Hey, dude.
Let me tell you what. Let me put Amanda Nunes in with the girls that she's fought. Might be the first death in MMA. Okay. And listen, I like her. I got nothing against her, but come on, let's be honest.
Don't be dogging.
Let's be honest.
No. You know what? Sometimes
you're a respectable journalist.
Oh, wait a minute. You don't let me answer the question.
Business. What are you talking about?
You don't let me answer the question.
Okay, answer the question.
I agree with you that her level of opposition has not been great. But I also know that sometimes there's certain fighters that you see, Khamzat Chimaev, that you know they are just unbelievable, and she is one of them. And she is one of those fighters. I saw her in the Olympics, and she, you know, when she was fighting the best judokas in the world, she was an unbelievable physical specimen, and the way she beat him, it was incredible. And she's doing that in MMA. And I have would she beat Amanda Nunes? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that Kayla Harris is going to beat a lot of damn people and is going to be one of the best fighters in the world for a long time. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So
duly noted.
Duly noted. So you can, if she loses to somebody you never heard of, then you can give me for that. So we'll see. We'll see about that. Just a couple, one other thing. What do you make of Wiley going with Henry Cejudo? That, seems like an odd comparison to me, but odd partnership there with me. I guess apparently Wiley told me that Henry said hello to her in Chinese in Los Angeles when Henry beat DJ for the title, and that's where their friendship began. But that's a little bit of a strange partnership, don't you think? Henry and Wiley.
No, I love it. Listen, there's no doubt Cejudo is a very talented guy, man. If you look at what he accomplished here, it's incredible. And right up until he retired, I mean, he looked unbelievable. I mean, in that Marias fight, Marias came out and put a beating on him in that first round.
Yeah.
He went back to the corner, made the adjustments he needed to make, came back out and broke him. broke Marlon Moraes.
Marlon's never been the same since.
Never been the same since. And I was going to say that. Not only did he break him, I think he ruined him.
It's been pretty incredible. Hey, by the way, Ali El-Aziz told me a week ago that 100% Henry's coming back to fight at featherweight.
Yeah.
Have you had that conversation?
I haven't heard.
He told me a week ago today, 100% he's back.
All right.
So there you go. That's another fun guy to add in. And finally, let's wrap up on this, because we were all over the place, and I neglected when we talked about 267 to ask you this. That referee Vyacheslav Kiselov in the fight, the Saint Denis fight, Zaleski versus Saint Denis. That was just abhorrent, what I thought. What role did you play in him no longer working on the card?
Well, you texted me and said, "Are you not there? Did you not see what just happened?" I'm like, "Yeah, we all saw what just happened, and we got him out of there."
Yeah, because I was just shocked. Like all of a sudden you weren't going crazy, so I thought maybe you weren't around.
Well, I had people, saying, that's never happened before. You've never pulled a ref, and that's not true. We've done it many times.
Yeah, I mean that was just that was just really as bad as I've ever. I know you like to dunk on Steve Mazzagatti. I mean, Mazzagatti was never that bad. I mean, that was just amazing.
Mazzagatti was pretty consistent. He was consistently bad. Mazzagatti was like, but the problem is that I didn't have control whether Mazzagatti stayed or not. It was the commission at that time, which in my opinion was the weakest that the commission has ever been. Mm-hmm. And, it'd be like having this guy consistently keep coming back, which would be not good.
Yeah. Do you have any word on how Saint Denis came out health-wise? I know he went to the hospital. Did you get any update on him? On
who?
On Benoit Saint Denis.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's good, or we would, we'd be dealing with that right now. Everybody was good.
Okay, good. UFC 268 at the world's most famous arena on Saturday, Madison Square Garden. You want to catch that? Great card. Dana White, appreciate you as always. See you soon, my friend.
Likewise, buddy. Take care.